we hit the OPSEC wall, I'll let you know. I know you're
Yes.
good about that.
And I think we might be live after a bit of delay of technicalities. Welcome everyone. Welcome to today's sort of an impromptu live stream. We
Trump.
tried with James to get a stream going for a while now, yet it was
Hmm.
always kind of postponed and so on. Now, as you know, I'm traveling, so it's harder for me to record the video. So I thought, hey, it's a great chance to do the recording in absolute field conditions that
There you
have
go.
no prepared technical
Yeah.
solutions on whatsoever. So there you go.
I'm
Welcome.
sure your no prepared is better than my completely prepared.
Yes. Guys in chat, can you please tell us if the stream is live, if you can hear us fine, if you can hear James fine, and then we'll adjust accordingly because this is all very, very different. So we are
Yeah.
live. The sound is good. Perfect. All good. Welcome, everyone. Today we have a very special guest, James. James will tell you more about who he is because I know has been changing some of his occupations.
Mm?
So how much we can talk about and share, and
Yeah, no,
we're gonna delve.
same occupation, just in a different place.
All right. Well, it's like you will have the chance to talk about it. But today we're going to be delving deep into the drone warfare. So all of your questions that you had about drones, evolving technologies on the front lines is going to be answered today. Oftentimes when I hear discussions about drones, they're sort of a surface level. So today we're going to be getting like the more time this stream will go forward, the nerdier it's going to get. So get your nerd glasses out and we're going to get into it. So James, could you please just introduce yourself for the sake of it, so
Yeah,
anyone that just stumbles upon this get an understanding who you are and what you're
sure.
doing.
Yeah. So I am the head of the um FPV fiber optic drone lab for Azov's International Battalion. So that's Azov Corps, 12th Special Purpose Brigade, 3rd International Battalion. And now, previously, the last time I was here, I was with another um, battalion, the Scythian Griffins, the 423rd battalion, which is a purely drone battalion that is actually still in the ground forces. Interestingly, all the 400s, the 414, 400 this, 400, they're all drone battalions, and most of them are part of the drone line or the unmanned systems forces. Um, but so now I'm in Azov. I made the decision to transfer over to the international battalion basically as soon as it was available for me to do so. And it's not to say that my previous battalion was bad or anything; they were great. I just felt that I could be more effective here and be able to do a lot more. So yeah. Oh, there we go.
That is fantastic to hear, James, and we're always glad to talk to you. I'm hoping we're going to talk in person at some point. But let's start easy. Let's start with the main part. So, short and sweet. How did the drone warfare evolve by now? I think a lot of people presumed that it was a bit of a initial drone warfare where there was like some scouting drones, the Bayraktars,
Sure,
bigger
sure.
drones at the beginning. Then we had some evolution where there was more FPV drones. Then were supposedly the fiber optics drones. And where are we now? Like,
Yeah,
can you tell us about the
sure,
regularities and complexities and so on?
sure. So I would say that it's getting more and more on both sides that especially in the most intense parts of the battlefield like Pokrovsk and Kupiansk right now. Um, that there's so much REB. That's the Ukrainian term for electronic warfare. Um, that flying regular RF radio electronic drones um, is just becoming increasingly difficult. If all you have is a base station antenna, I mean, forget about just having antennas on your controller. That's a non-starter unless you're working at the range of like 100 meters or something. Um, but before, maybe a year ago, you could have a base station set up, maybe like a 7, 8, 9, 10 meter tripod, and you got an antenna on there. You got some Yagis or whatever, and that was good enough for multiple kilometers, maybe 10 kilometers. And now that's not really an option anymore. It's gotta be fiber optic, except in special cases. And so that's why I have the job I have. My background is that I was a network and systems engineer in the United States. I helped build internet infrastructure all across the southwest of the United States, and actually worked as senior network systems engineer at NASA Ames Research Center, um, under contract with another university. Helped build out their fiber optic um, infrastructure on the civilian side. And so, it's great to be able to bring that expertise to bear here.
For sure. And I will be getting some of the questions if they're appropriate. So, guys, feel free to ask your questions. Brad is asking, he says, maybe a silly question, but why not modify remote control planes like they use at aero clubs for anti drone warfare? I've seen few model jet planes in actions.
Oh yeah, this is actually happening. In one way or another. Um, I'm not currently working on fixed wing systems, but I certainly have that as a plan. It's in the works. We just have to build capacity. Um, so, I mean, the answer is it's absolutely happening. The Russians are doing it, and the Ukrainians are starting to do it. One of the problems is that the Russians are able to scale faster than the Ukrainians are in terms of production. And so they are able to, Ukrainians come up with an idea, and 2 weeks later, the Russians have copied it and have a factory making the damn thing, you know? And that's true for fiber optic drones. The fiber optic drones were brought here to Ukraine first, and the Ukrainians weren't able to scale it up fast enough, and the Russians got there first, and so when you're talking about interceptors in terms of like fixed wing, essentially remote control interceptors, um, that is being done. You have to understand that these like Shaheds, for example, or also the reconnaissance drones, they do fly quite fast. Okay, so if you're going to intercept them, you really need to have um, either a very fast fixed wing system, or extremely maneuverable, and that is one reason why you see these um, the fixed. I'm sorry, the quadcopter interceptors are generally designed for high maneuverability and high speed, essentially. Now, what is starting to happen is that there are on both sides. Okay, there are fixed wing motherships that carry quadcopters, um, and then act as a like kind of a daisy chain. Sometimes fixed wing fiber optic drones, even they call the Millennia drone that comes from Russia, and it's attacked me today. Well, I mean my area, you know, as I was driving back to my apartment here, I saw the smoke coming up. Not very far away. We get 10 to 15 of them a day, and sometimes they are kamikazes. Sometimes they carry um, FPVs, or quadcopters of some fashion. And so yeah, there are groups working on that, from an interceptor perspective. And in fact, I created a proposal about that almost a year ago. That there are some groups working on. It's not something I'm.
We're going to jump. We're going to return to the topic of both interceptors, the Shaheds, and the Molnia with the carrying. As I said, we're going to dive very much in depth today. So let's talk with the fiber optics. You said that the regular FPV is not a question, so let's kind of not wrap up, but at least like get this layer of understanding about the FPVs and the fiber optics. How is fiber optics different, and what are the bottlenecks? Like why Ukraine cannot scale as fast as Russia? What is the issue?
Yeah.
Is it the lack of fiber optics? Like
Yeah.
what is it?
Why Ukraine? Hey, that's the name of my fundraising website. Funny you should mention.
Subscribe.
if you could, I don't know if you can bring share a screen. It would be great if you could bring up
I will
what.
not risk it. Like seriously,
Okay.
this all setup holds like pretty
It's
much on
like
duct tape.
barely okay.
Like
So if you go
people
to
said that your microphone is a bit too low, so I was trying to find any
mine or
sound
yours.
settings, and I was like this close about pressing a button of cancel stream. So yours microphone is like, and I was like, okay, no, better not touch. So it's working for now. So
So my website. So I have a YouTube channel. It's Why Ukraine. I have a website, whyukraine.com. You can see it on your screen there. The letter Y, the word Ukraine, all one word altogether. .com. Okay, you can go there and support Azov International Battalion buying these fiber optic drones. I've got authorization to put that link right at the top of my website, and it will take you to the Azov International fundraising page. I think it's Monobank. Now, John Newman, thank you very much for posting that link um, in the chat. And then now below that Azov link there's some other links you can see where if people want to buy supplies specifically for my laboratory, fiber optic cable, or fiber, optical fiber, media converters, the drones themselves, all of the tools that we need. I'm getting a bunch of new engineers in a couple of weeks, and I need to have the lab set up and prepared for them to sit down and go to town. I've got 2 engineers training on fiber optic spooling, and so let's talk about these bottlenecks. Fiber optics it's not a panacea. It's not a fix. You know, Originally fiber optics were used just in the worst case scenarios when like let's say you have you have a hill, and maybe your antenna is on the other side of a hill or it's on top of a hill, but you've got a shadow and the enemy is down here in that shadow. You have to have line of sight, or basically between your drone and that antenna, and you have to maintain that line of sight to operate that radio frequency drone. If they're down there in this valley, if you've ever had a bad cell phone coverage when you're practically right underneath a cell phone tower, okay? And like the cell phone tower's on the top of a hill and you're in a valley and you're like, why am I not getting signal? I can see the tower. Well, it's because there's that shadow effect that happens. Okay, so that was a special situation for fiber optics, just an example. But now they have to be used almost everywhere because of that electronic warfare. Now, what are the bottlenecks? What are the problems? Spooling the fiber. Okay? Spooling the fiber. In other words, comes on these big rolls from the manufacturer. They are unwieldy. I am testing ways to just use the raw spools, but it's not ideal unless you're using like a big, really big, like a Vampire drone or something. Aerodynamics and angular momentum. Okay, think about like you've got to put you have let's say you have a 10-inch wide drone with 4 propellers, right? You got to put a battery on there, and that weighs so many kilograms. You got to put some kind of munition on there, and that weighs so many kilograms. And then you got this big ass freaking roll thing. Now, normally you'd have a battery on top, and the munition would be on the bottom. Where are you going to put the roll, right? Because the further away you put the spool, the spool of fiber from the center of mass of the drone, the more unwieldy it becomes for the pilot to steer. Then also consider this: as the drone is flying, the flight characteristics change because it's letting out this fiber, and so it's losing weight. It's like it's going on a diet, a very fast diet. And so the pilots have to be more skilled to deal with that. Okay.
it's almost like the what is it, the space rocket mechanics, right? Like the
Yeah.
launch mechanics, where
Yeah.
it's like they develop like you need to, what is it, the delta V changes
Yep.
based on the reduction in mass and so
Yep.
on.
Yep. I'm just getting started here. Okay. Now you're imagine if you've ever I don't know, pulled thread off of a spool of thread, right? Normally it comes off okay, but it comes off okay if you're holding the spool and you're letting it turn in your hand. But that's not how this fiber is coming off. Hold the oh man, I had a sewing thread sitting around. I guess it's on the shelf out there. But imagine you're pulling the thread this way. Oh, here I can use a battery as an example. Here's a drone battery. But imagine this is a spool of thread, okay? And you're pulling the thread this way. Is it going to come off? Uh-oh. Is my internet okay?
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
continue on.
Yeah, sometimes when we have like drone attacks and stuff, the internet will go screwy. So imagine you're pulling the thread this way. There's going to be some resistance here. It doesn't want to come off the spool. But also, if you pull it the wrong way, you could break it. Although it's glass, it's difficult to break. But also, it can come off in big clumps, get all tangled up with itself, or get stuck inside. So you have a spool inside a
I think
container.
anyone that has ever gone fishing can understand what tangling the lines can look
Boosh.
like. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Exactly this. And so there's all kinds of potential problems um, in transport, right? So the drones have to be transported. They put them on a freaking Humvee or an MRAP or something and drive to the safest location they could drop guys off, and then they have to walk maybe 2, 5, 15 kilometers sometimes to the position where they're going to launch these things from. And in that case, uh, they're bouncing along, and this fiber, if it's not, uh, it can settle and come off the spool. The lines can wrap around each other so that just like if you've ever pulled your headphones out of your freaking pocket, okay, and you know what a disaster that is. That's exactly what can happen to the fiber, okay. Um, and you won't know it until you start flying sometimes, and then it takes off and it goes a kilometer or 5 down the road, and then just dies, and you're like, why? I don't even know what happened. So these are all things. When the fiber might come out correctly when the drone's moving forward. What happens when the drone has to move backwards? Then instead of pulling this way, you're pulling this way. Okay? All of these things. I mean,
Super. Brushito, sorry for butchering the name. What happens after the war ends regarding the fiber optic cables? This is my trade. Fiber is dangerous. I come from its early days. Who is going to clean it all up?
that's an excellent question. It's Brush It Off. That's the
Brush it
name.
off. Sorry.
Brush It
I
Off
mean,
503.
actually, very accurate name for what's going to happen with the cleanup of the
Brushito.
fiber optic. Brushito, yes. I butcher names all the
We'll
time.
just brush it off. We'll just brush
Yeah,
it
we
off.
just brush it off.
I mean,
Don't worry.
look. Hey, here we go. So my goal after the war is I'm gonna have if I don't know if you're familiar, Georgie, with the British BBC archaeology series Time Team. You ever heard of that before?
First time
It's
hearing.
25 years, 25 seasons. This show is majorly popular in Great Britain and in America. It's an archaeology show where they have like archaeology professors. They have work regular jobs, and then they have a host. Okay, and some grandma calls this time team. They're called. Okay, and they come out to grandma's backyard potato garden because I think I found a Roman coin, and they dig up this whole potato garden, and sometimes they discover like an ancient temple or freaking Stonehenge or something. Sometimes they find nothing, but they only have 3 days to do it. Okay, and that's the thing. It's an amazing TV show. It's on YouTube now. I want to do the same thing here in Ukraine. It's going to be Time Team, but with like mines and fiber optic cable, and that's how we're going to fund the cleanup, guys. So just be aware that's going to happen.
Super. All right, let's stay at this level of complexity when we're still not too much into details. But second type of drone that is obviously now taking over, well, Europe mostly, because Europe suddenly found out that we don't have a defense against drones, is obviously the interceptor drones. They've appeared very rapidly, as a response? I know they've been in development for a while now, they've been tested, but kind of like a lot of these new pushes have pushed the interceptor drones up to the task. What are the situation with them? How hard or easy it is to scale, and what are the challenges both for manufacturer, if you know,
Yeah.
pilots, if you know, and the targets they're trying to intercept?
I mean, honestly, it's the same problems with FPVs. It's just now we have a new thing that we got to make. Okay. Yeah, there are slightly different flight characteristics because they are usually of a different shape where how the munitions are placed and the batteries are placed. They are meant to fly typically upward versus sideways, so everything's rearranged. Um, other than that, it's really just scaling that production and Ukraine, by and large, I would argue, um, does not have the. They're developing it, okay, but they've had to develop the infrastructure, but also the culture necessary for mass production. Okay, a lot of the Ukrainians in my laboratory, they're amazing technicians, craftsmen. They can do anything, okay, but they don't how do I say this? They don't work together. In other words, every guy has a drone and he fixes that one drone and then he moves on to the next drone. He does everything with that drone and he's responsible solely for that drone. He takes full responsibility for that drone. That is unfortunately an incredibly inefficient way to manufacture, repair, modify drones. Instead, what you got to do is each person has 3 to 5 tasks, and this guy does this guy does that, this guy does that, and it pass it on down the line. Well, then who takes responsibility? And you have this big argument about it. I would argue that the this is where the Ukrainian drive for independence that goes to the granular level down to every single individual person um, works against them. You know what I mean? And so building that cultural tradition of mass manufacturing is
Yeah.
also difficult when you have no money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, money is definitely short for Ukraine.
hmm,
I'm sorry for the sound, guys. Like we're really trying to work with what we have with James. Some people suggested that you potentially should try to focus on the microphone because you have directional, but I don't know. Um, anyway, like just sorry for the sound that it is what it is. We
yeah, it sounded
cannot
okay to
really
me.
adjust here. Yes, it sounds okay to me too. Um, so you're saying basically that the interceptor drones are generally good, but Ukrainians just don't have the full manufacturing, um,
Right.
how do you say, like a culture, so to say, its scale,
Yeah.
and this
Yeah.
is something for them to still to learn. Antonio Spias, by the way, thank you so much for the support. I appreciate it. Please remember to first and foremost support the fundraisers or the links for the drones rather than this channel, but I do appreciate everything. So it is interesting that you mentioned, but because like we now hear supposedly there's so many drones that it's not even worth investing. This is was been my experience, sort of like as you know, like I worked with this company called Befa, and they are now producing drones, and we're going to be essentially partnering with them. They're going to be creating a lot of drones for Ukraine. And
Cool.
I had my share when I was trying to push them and present them to both the politicians and in Ukraine and so on. And it was interesting for me to talk with a lot of the representatives here in Denmark, where they were basically, oh, there's like so many drone producers, like why would you do even more drones and so on. It's almost like why would you do this if everything is already solved, sort of an attitude. Do you think there is a disconnect between this or perception on the ground
Massive.
or not?
Oh my god. Oh, there's so many drones. These are people who have no idea how many drones are necessary on the battlefield. Let's do some math here. Your average drone team on a good day, okay, not when it's pouring rain or whatever, but on an average day, should be able to launch about 30 drone missions per day, FPVs or whatever. Okay. Um, how many drone teams does a battalion have like that? Okay, 3, 9.
Just for
maybe
people
something.
like myself, a battalion is how much? How many people?
Um, well, what it's supposed to be, like
That's the big question.
3 to 500 in that range. But I can tell you that a lot of battalions are more like down in the 150 range. They have the structure, but not the manpower. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
let's
But
say
how many drones?
so that's 100 drones a day, 150 drones a day. So a brigade, right, which should be at least like minimum of 3 battalions or more than that. Um, should be doing uh 300, 500 drones a day. Okay. How many brigades does Ukraine have? Almost every brigade is using drones in some way. Doesn't Not just the unmanned systems forces. They're all using them. Okay. How many thousands and thousands of drones? There is an unlimited need. No, we do not have enough drones. Ukraine does not have my unit. I'm gathering trophy drones. I'm having my assaulters. I just begged them today. Please go out there and find um, broken Russian drones on the ground and try not to blow yourself up and bring them back to me because that's how desperate we are. We're Frankensteining these things. Okay, it's yeah. So does that
Yeah,
answer
thank
your
you.
question?
It's very important to hear because, as I said, perspectives are wild.
Yeah,
Like especially
yeah,
like
yeah.
the disconnect because like I've seen it in person and the disconnect in wild. So we need more of this narratives
It's
being
ridiculous.
voiced.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on. So the interceptors are obviously popping, and you explained that there's challenges for mass production right now. What about these targets that interceptors are trying to intercept? We obviously know about the Russian Shahed drones. We've seen some evolution of the Shahed drones, including the Shahed Mark II, which was able to fly a lot higher than the first one and was a
Yeah.
little bit more smarter. Like it used the Cometa, this is the radio, what is it called, antenna that allows them to essentially be more electronic warfare resistant. And then we heard about the Mark III, supposedly, that was already the jet powered Shahed types, and obviously these are different challenges. So, what you can tell about the Russian drone Shaheds? How did they evolve? What is the challenges right now? Because I've heard they're being used also around the front lines.
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly, has Ukraine also tried to delve into this niche?
Yeah, yeah, they are. The Ukraine has multiple. There's so many different versions of this type of drone that Ukraine has, but they are. I would argue they are behind Russia, not just in terms of production, but in the development of the Shahed. It was very rudimentary to begin with. It is no longer a rudimentary drone by any means. The main argument that I would like to make is by the way, there's some really good questions in the chat that I want to get to too. But the main
Right after
argument,
this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But the main argument I would make is one thing that Ukraine has an amazingly good internet and cellular infrastructure for the size of country that it is and the wealth of this country. It's freaking amazing. Fiber optic, you know, in the smallest town, smallest village in Ukraine, you got fiber optic, you got unlimited cellular. I pay like $10 a month for unlimited data on my cell phone. I have multiple SIMs and it's 40 megabits almost everywhere I go in Ukraine. Even on the front lines if you're stupid enough to turn your uh, cell phone on. So um like in some places. um so this is what Russia is using in their Shaheds against Ukraine. Okay, they have every SIM card has it's called an IMEI number. It's a unique identifier. They can go and get these. They have agents here in Ukraine who can buy them in bulk, and they ship them to Russia, and they pop them in these Shaheds. And then when the Shaheds are flying, they're using Ukraine's own cellular networks to hunt and seek in real time. These are no longer just pre-programmed flights. They are FPVs. They're giant. And that's the other thing. People don't realize how big these things are. They're like, I don't know, like 3 meters tall. So like 9, 10 foot tall, something like that.
Yeah, I
Um,
fully realized when I only like I came to Ukraine, I was basically there was a one that crashed in the field of one of the guys we were staying in a farm,
yeah,
and I literally stood right next to it, and the
yeah,
thing is just
yeah,
huge.
yeah. And also, one thing that they do, to supplement that, it's not they're not just using one tool for communications. They're not just using one tool for navigation. They also have inertial navigation. They also have GPS, but they're sophisticated enough to detect when they're spoofing, and they just turn that off, and it turns off automatically as soon as it detects, you know, when the GPS spoofing sends them to Peru or something like that. Um,
I would like to insert here like one of the questions from the chat is: does not this make them more expensive and more difficult to produce?
Sure, absolutely. When you're manufacturing at scale, naturally your costs go down the more you manufacture. So yes, was expensive, but it's the prices are going down. It's the cycle of time. They come up with a new technology, it raises the price, and then it comes down as they manufacture more. And this is why Ukraine hitting that plant, that manufacturing plant, is so incredibly important. So incredibly important. At the same time, Ukraine's version of long range drones, um, all the various ones now, there's so many, they face a challenge because Russia doesn't have the kind of widespread, dense um, cellular and internet infrastructure that Ukraine does. In Russia, and this is especially true in the occupied territories, rather than having uh, mobile cellular phone operators who cover the whole country, basically, there's regional ones. So if you want to drive your car and have your cell phone work between one region or another, you have to have SIM cards with every single one, and they may or may not have agreements with each other. It's like America in the early 2000s. Think about that, where you wouldn't know if your cell phone was going to work if you went to a new state or a new place. It's very much like that. So Ukrainian drones face a challenge there on Russian territory, essentially.
JB Wild says the assembly line versus the independent skilled workers. Same thing
Mm,
in World War II with Americans versus German production. James,
yeah.
thank you so much for your work, and thank you so much for $10, GB.
Hey, hey.
Okay, there was a question that you wanted to get to, James. So please go ahead.
Oh man, there was like five of them. Yeah. Let's see. Are drone operators close enough to seek and destroy each other? It's Blackstone. Yes, absolutely. But sometimes, due to Reb or whatever, they don't have the range. But yeah, if we can find where the drone operators are, and the Russians do the same to us. They're constantly trying to find our blindages, and it doesn't help that it seems like some of the Ukrainian units have found out that our drone units have the best hiding places, and we also have like Starlink or other connectivity, and so we'll have Ukrainians from other units all walking to our locations to check their cell phone or whatever, and then the Russians find us, and we get we have to move again. It's really frustrating. Um, and then or would Ukraine's mobile drone hunting units be a good idea? It depends on where you're talking. If you're talking on the front lines, yes, we need interceptors more in the rear zone area. It's almost impossible, very difficult for to intercept like an FPV drone. Okay, but understand that in order to use those FPVs and in order for the Russians to advance, they have a bunch of, their satellite is not great. Okay, their satellite network is not the best. So to replace that, they have a bunch of reconnaissance drones that are constantly flying over Ukrainian territory within about 50 kilometers of the front line, but also deeper, like the Gerbera drones that will often precede the Shaheds and provide like reconnaissance. They're much smaller, but they have a much longer flight time because they don't carry much munition at all. Um, and we need to take away their eyes. We need to take away those eyes. Now, in my previous battalion, we had an interceptor team. So this is, 9, 10 months ago, and we had an interceptor team, and basically, from that position, where the interceptor team was, no Russian reconnaissance drone would fly within 10 kilometers of that position, okay? And that's what Ukraine needs to do. So we do need mobile drone hunting units for those long and mid-range recon drones. The CV90 is not a great thing for that tactic. The CV90 needs to be delivering troops and drone operators to the front line precisely because it can take a few hits. We could have, 4 guys in the back of a van 20 to 30 kilometers behind the front line with a whole bunch of interceptor drones watching on the radar for different drones coming in and taking them out. That's what we need. Okay, sorry. There was other questions, wasn't there? Let's see. Mass production is needed. Yes, robotics is present in the future. Okay. Oh, yeah, here we go. Question for James. Sarah Wiltsey, unrelated to drones. I'm not sure you can reply. Why did Zelensky allow young people to leave the country? It doesn't make sense.
Let's focus on the drones today. I really want this
Yeah,
to be
that is
condensed.
another
We
question.
can talk about different
Yeah,
political questions at some other times. Sorry,
yeah.
guys, but like I really want this to be
JB
focused.
Weld says you can use a cell phone for basic inertial navigation due to its accelerometers. Yeah, don't tell anybody about that, JB Weld. That's something I really, really want to do. Well, I won't go into that. But yeah, that is definitely a thing. But there is a delay. Okay, so a cell phone has a delay. Flight controllers on a drone have that same, but it's hardware based for those accelerometers. So there's no delay. So if you want to fly like an FPV or an interceptor drone, you have to have the minimal delay possible because those flight conditions can change. So yeah,
All right.
yeah,
Before
I
we
think that's good.
continue, uh, Petra Olsen, thank you so much for 269 Swedish krona with love to Ukraine. Appreciate it. And Sir Whom, thank you so much for $70 Canadian. Ukraine will win. Appreciate it. They will surely win with our support. So support the fundraisers. Go to James' website specifically for the drones. So my last question in this mid nerd complexity range before we start going into like a complete obscure things
Deeper.
that people will be like, really, what are they talking about? The drone's evolution and new capabilities that are appearing are truly unique. You already mentioned the lightning drone, Molnia, that is basically made out of just a couple sticks and some
Yep.
bullshit.
Yep. Shit
and
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 sticks.
they're,
That's the saying.
yes, pretty much. They're carrying FPV drones tens of kilometers behind the front lines, and then you have basically an FPV that is able to work much, much further than it used to before. And then you also have developments as drones being almost the primary logistics tools on the front line that is also being used. And finally, we've seen development of the ground, what is it called? What is it? How is they called in English? Because
UGVs.
in Ukraine, yeah, UGVs, because it's NRK
Yeah.
in Ukrainian. So the ground
Yeah. Yeah.
drones. Tell
Yeah.
me
Ground
about
drones.
these. Like how fast are they developing? How are they appearing? What are the most interesting things here? And what do we should be on the lookout for?
Yeah. So, ground drones. I think this next year is going to be the year of ground drones. To be honest, I mean, it's just an absolute necessity. We need more effectively. We need more infantry on the battlefield, and there just isn't that. And ground drones are going to replace that. There's already been instances. Third Army Corps, formerly Third Assault Brigade, which split off from Azov earlier in the war. Um, I would say is a little bit ahead of the game, a little bit ahead of us, in fact. And this is where we're we're playing catch up, frankly. And my intention is once I get this fiber optic thing, rolling for our laboratory, I'm going to hop over and ramp up the ground drone situation. Again, it's an issue of mass manufacturing. Okay, there's a lot of uses for this. We've already seen, Third Assault Brigade and maybe another brigade, maybe it's Hartia, I can't remember, um, did a full assault just with ground drones. That's all they used. Okay. Now, I don't think that infantry is ever going to be completely replaced, and I think that was like a special situation. We don't have ground drones that are going to dive into a trench right now, but a combination of of uh, of FPVs, ISR reconnaissance drones, and ground drones working together can do a whole heck of a lot. But you need somebody to control and operate those ground drones. So then you run into some of the same issues. That you have with regular FPVs. The nice thing is, so think of a ground drone as a platform that you can put anything on. You can use it for CASEVAC, okay, casualty evacuation. And that's the for kind of like the first level of use. That's probably the most important for saving lives. Um, you can mount a gun turret on it and have that turret be controlled remotely. And that might be used for assault and also might be able to be used for air defense. Secondarily, there are this is not new technology at all. You have don't call it AI because it's not, but you have turrets that can automatically recognize targets and fire at them without human control at all. And there's been cases where one ground turret, just in the past few months, one of these ground turrets held a position for like 90 days. You know, I don't know how they resupplied it with ammo, but they must have had, a big long thing of ammo running down into the blindage or something. I don't know what. But that's going to be uh, the future that Ukraine desperately, desperately needs because we don't want to sacrifice any more good soldiers. It's done from the idea of the preservation of human life and human decency. Unfortunately, the end result is that we're building the freaking Matrix and Terminator all together.
So true. All right, let's dive in deep. And JB Weld actually touched on specifically the question that I wanted to touch. In some of our last conversation, you mentioned that identifying drones is a challenge, friend or foe specifically. With the density of drones right now, I believe it still is a challenge, especially for some of the frontline soldiers.
Yeah.
But has this been addressed? Like, has there been any specific developments in this field, or is it still the case where that we just don't know?
No. It's. I mean, look. There was a assault. One of my assaulter guys yesterday just told me, you know, I think I told him, hey, next time you see a drone, look up. It might be mine. And he said, well, don't worry, I'll still shoot it down. Um, if you see a drone, you shoot it. If you are a infantry guy, you don't care. Okay, you just so drone operators have to be very careful where they're flying. And it's not just that. You also have electronic warfare. Both sides have electronic warfare, right? So if you're not flying on the right signal range and there's not proper communication, communication is the key here. Absolutely key. Communication and coordination between units, both within a brigade, within a battalion, and between brigades. Okay, that is what's going to fix this problem, and it's only, frankly, by units banging their head against the wall, going, "Oh my God, we just got our drones shot down," and being frustrated, and the commander saying, "Why didn't this mission go well?" Well, this is why. And then, for people to make those changes in communication, because there is a very strong cultural impetus in Ukraine between Ukrainians against communication between groups or
Yep.
within groups even.
Then another question. There is been interesting discussion that I've been a part of with regards to what kind of drones and what kind of frequencies. Like, you mentioned already at the beginning that frequencies in general right now is sort of the thing of the past. That right now it's pretty much fiber or get the fuck out.
Mm.
But one of the interesting conversations that I've heard was that which drones and which frequencies do you need? And the answer from Ukrainian side was 2.4 gigahertz, which
Mm-hmm.
is like the most default frequency I can get. This is literally just a
Mm-hmm.
commercial grade frequency. And the
Yeah.
argument was that the Russians are using it. Therefore,
Yeah.
like
Right.
sometimes we can have it cleared and we can therefore fly that frequency. And I've seen the big chart of like a table of all of the known frequencies for the drones that are flying. It's a huge chart,
Yeah.
and there are like some super exotic, both low and high end ones.
Yep. Yep.
So, what is the deal with frequencies right now on that and
All
so
right.
on?
So it is not universal. By any, you could talk to one guy in Pokrovsk and some other guy in Sumy, another guy in Zaporizhia, AO, and they're going to have completely different stories. Okay, because it's different everywhere you go. Okay, if I would say like in like Pokrovsk area, for example, that's a really the Russians are putting a lot of their resources in there, and so you're going to be much more restricted. I wouldn't even try 2.4. Okay, you in other places where it's not quite so intense. Yeah, yeah, go for it. That is definitely a technique. We find out what frequencies the Russians are not doing their reb on, and we say, oh, that's what they're going to be flying on. So we either want to have reb on those frequencies, or we want to fly our own drones on those frequencies. Sometimes, unfortunately, like a commander of an area, the brigade level or something, will just have to say, okay, all drones stop flying right now. We need to figure out whose drones are what and where they're coming from and what frequencies. And be at one brigade will put up reb and it'll screw uh the unit next door, you know, and so it's a constant problem. This is communication, 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 because it's always changing and it's always going to. Now, higher frequencies are getting more and more common. So I'm talking about above 5.8, 6, 7. I mean, going all the way up to, the problem is you get more rain fade. Rain fade, it becomes a problem. Above 2.4, certainly in the 5 gigahertz range, that's where any water, I don't mean just rain, I'm talking about the leaves on trees have enough water in them to block the signal. Yeah.
This is the table I was talking about. Like I know you cannot see, but this is like all of the known frequencies that there
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
on the front line, and there's
and
like
and there
all
are
the way up
gaps
to
too.
12,000.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and this is another. So this is why we need drone laboratories like mine. Okay. Look, I'm not. By no means am I saying, oh, we're not using radio frequencies anymore. No, no. We need more engineers who can change. We get drones from wherever, from the brigade. They come from the manufacturer, and they have whatever frequency that VTX or whatever that's on them. Almost guaranteed, we're gonna have to change that out, okay, to match whatever's the on the battlefield today. You know, so this is what a drone laboratory does. This is why our work is so necessary, because we are constantly playing that cat and mouse game. With the Russian side, there's always going to be a gap somewhere that we can slip in. You know, and that's what we do.
Then there was a question with regards to VTX, specifically the digital part. There was a
Mm-hmm.
challenge, like some a little bit over the half a year that I talked about that because of the solutions for the drones electronic warfare was the transition from the analog to encoded digital
Mm-hmm.
VTX.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge was, I believe, if I remember correctly, talking about this, that in a digital transmission, like if you have some packet losses, then you just have basically back screen receiving, rather than when it's an analog signal, then you can just have like a jammed image, like, but you can still sort of make your way forward. Yet, I also talked with some of the developers that have been saying that they're trying to introduce some of these neurofilters and decoding solutions and so on. What's the situation on the ground? Has some of this been implemented? How is the implementation of digital? Are these solutions at scale making it on the ground, or this is just all presentation fantasy BS?
No, so you have a legacy when you're talking about digital communications that goes all the way back to the development of Ethernet. Okay, Ethernet signaling, and It's like it works like walkie-talkies. Okay, very fast walkie-talkies. If you ever used walkie-talkies when you're a kid or whatever, you had one. When you're talking, nobody else can talk, right? So you hit the button and you talk. You say hello. Do you hear me? And then over, right? And then the other antenna over there, the other guy says, "Yes, I do. Copy that. Over." Okay, that's how your wireless signal, my Ethernet connection, wired connection is working at thousands of times per second. If it's so many gigahertz, then that's how many times it's happening. 5.8 million times per second, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Okay, so what happens when someone else is talking on your same channel on your walkie-talkie? Nobody else can talk, right? That's the issue. And so if that guy is really far away and he doesn't have a very strong antenna, then you might have some overlap or something like that. But and you might still be able to talk. So here's what happens, right? The way Ethernet works, okay? If you have two computers on the same Ethernet line, okay, it's called a collision domain. One computer starts sending data, hello, blah, blah, blah. And if it happens to happen at the same time that another computer is sending that data, then both pieces of data get destroyed. Okay, they're gone. And then both computers have a timer. They wait a random amount of time, so many milliseconds, before sending that data again. And hopefully, it's not the same number of milliseconds for both computers. The same is happening with all these digital communications. It's all based on that. That that basic idea is not going to be that. We need to get away from that in digital communications. I don't know what the solution is going to be there, but we have to get away from that. So the other thing is, well, okay, so when you're flying and this happens and you've got the reb gets too intense, right? So what happens is the VTX, it tries to send, it doesn't go through, it doesn't get anything back, so it tries it again, and then it just says, I'm going to give up, I'm going to wait a random amount of time, and I'm going to try it again. And that's why your screen will go black. The drone might keep on flying, and maybe once it flies through that most intense reb, maybe you'll pick up the drone on the other side. And this happens. And sometimes even drone operators, if they know the terrain well enough and they have a good navigator beside them with like a map and everything, they can navigate without vision, without being able to see. And they can navigate through like hills and valleys and over trees and stuff to be able to get out of that situation and continue towards their target, or make it, back home, or just get out of that reb. That does happen, but it's pretty rare. It takes a very skilled operator, skilled navigator.
Yeah. A couple of questions while we're on this one. Haviland, so is asking, I know enough of this stuff to be useful. Do you take volunteers to build and fly develop? I'm not sure if Azov is still taking in recruits, but if you don't look to join the military, then Richard Woodruff's project is getting volunteers training, and they're building a lot of very important drones from the front line. So if you would like to, for me to connect you, just write me an email to ukrainematters2022@gmail.com. I'm pretty sure one of the moderators will write it in chat. Just mail me. I'll connect you to become the volunteer with Richard if you're really up to it. And then there was a question from GD. Are almost all drones single use, or is there drones you can reuse?
Sure, of course. I mean, they're called bomber drones. Yeah. So there's okay.
Talk
so
about it. Like a lot of people
okay.
don't know what that means.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so you've got FPV kamikaze drones. Yeah, they carry a munition, a grenade, a RPG-7, whatever it is, and impact the vehicle, the orc, the blindage, whatever that is. Okay, those are not reusable, right? But then you can have, first of all, there's reconnaissance drones, which should be reusable per mission. So that might be like your Unfortunately, nothing has been found to replace the Mavic effectively, or the DJI, I should say, effectively, in terms of close range reconnaissance. Within a couple hundred meters of infantry, for example. Um, and those, you want to get a lot of missions out of those because they're really expensive. And so we spend a lot of time, Frankensteining those things back to life because they get shot at, they crash, the battery runs out, the ice freezes on them, all kinds of things. And then you have bomber drones. Okay, so bomber drones have some sort of a drop mechanism. Um, this is what Amazon wanted to use when they were like, we're going to use drones for logistics. That's essentially what we're doing. And bomber drones can drop munitions, things that explode. They can also, and this you were talking, Georgia, you were talking about drones being used for logistics, and that's exactly what a lot of these drones are being used for. Just water. When the front lines are so squiggly all over the place, right? And so um, it's you can't get to the soldiers get isolated out there for days, months even. And the only way to get to them without having 5 vehicles blown up, which happens, the only way to get to them is by drone and delivering like water and food to these people, to these soldiers out there.
Yeah, I try to talk about it a lot. It's always like me fighting against the people that are following lines on the map, just
Yeah.
trying to explain to everyone that it's like the fact that you see here red, here not red, doesn't mean that
Mm.
Russians
Not
are not
anymore.
here and that Ukrainians are not there. It's
Not anymore.
all, yeah.
There was a group I saw yesterday, a group of Russians in a vehicle that got to the outskirts of Dobropilia. Yeah, and they died obviously, but so we're just like hell bent for leather all the way, and it was unexpected, but it happens, um,
Yeah.
even in
Can
like
you
the
talk
fortress
about
cities. Yeah.
Yeah, can you talk about frequency hopping and directional signals?
Mm.
How useful,
Oh,
non-useful,
I'm
possible,
glad you brought it
non-possible?
up. I'm really glad you brought it up. You know, that is the direction that we need to go. That is the direction that things uh, are going. It requires a certain amount of technology and development. Frequency hopping. Obviously, frequency hopping has been around a long time. It's how your cell phone works. Okay, but it hasn't been adapted to drones as much. I mean, the Shaheds have it. Obviously, they have basically a cell phone inside of them. You know, um, but consider that the infrastructure necessary to have frequency hopping in your cellular network is you have cellular towers mounted every kilometer, 3 kilometers, whatever that is. Okay, and they form this hexagonal grid essentially that covers an area. Okay, well, if you're going to do that with drones, that means you have to have a bunch of different antennas, or one antenna with a bunch of different, I mean, one mast, I should say, with a bunch of different antennas on it, which is a huge target. Okay. And all of those antennas on that mast cost money. Um, and so, yeah, so it is the way that things are going. That's going to preserve the use of radio frequency drones for longer, essentially, you um, but that needs to be more in development. What was the other thing you asked about?
Uh,
Frequency hopping.
Frequency hop and directional
Yeah.
signals.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. So directional signals. I mean that's obvious. It's already being used. Yagis
What
or
is it called?
various.
Narrow band? Was it called narrow band? What is the professional term
There's
for it?
narrowband. That's one thing. Narrowband means you are. I mean, most of our drones are on narrowband, so they're just a range of 5 megahertz or less. That's shooting out, or 1 megahertz. Okay, that's the range of, as opposed to being spread out over 20 megahertz. Okay, it's more like shining a flashlight, focusing in a very strong frequency rather than being spread out. Okay, both have their. You also have ultra wideband, where you can, oh, you got some interference over here, you can move over here a little bit and do that kind of frequency hopping within a certain range, essentially. But the physics of the antennas limit how much that range is going to be. The size of the antenna, it's a factor of the size of the light wave. Actually, it has to be um, at or close to a factor of the the sine wave, if you can picture that, not to get too mathy about it. Okay, and that is what
No,
determines
no,
the
we're
size
already
of
in sections that like if people stick around this part, so we can get into that as well. That's fine.
right. So yeah, so you've got that as that is coming, essentially. Another thing that is coming is anti-spoofing technologies for like GPS and things. Um, and that can be used. We already have like diversity antennas. So you have two antennas picking up the same signal, and that helps to filter out noise. So I think we're going to get into more of that in terms of like GPS. There's technology that's in the works that's like CRPA, that determines the direction of the source of a GPS signal effectively, basically, and says, "Oh, that's coming from the wrong direction. I don't want to use that one. I'm going to use another one." Because there are multiple GPS satellites and they're up in the sky, and most of your spoofing electronic warfare systems are down on the ground. So, if you can block those, even in a rudimentary fashion, or force your GPS system to deny those, then that's helpful. It's one tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, we're slowly going to move towards wrapping this up. I want this to be maximum like an hour and a half, but
Oh
preferably
yeah,
an hour.
we're already over an
So,
hour.
yeah,
Whoops.
this is super exciting. I would like to do more of these. But guys, please ask some of your last questions,
Mm.
and then my last one for James, while everyone is typing the questions that they would like to get answered to, is what do you think is the obscure thing that everyone is misunderstanding about drones? Like, have you noticed like a similar pattern just being repeated time and time and time again, and it was always wrong, and it gets you to pull your hairs out?
Yeah. So uh, from within, you know, the army. Keep in mind that I am in, a military unit, Azov International Battalion, by the way. Which, if you're wondering, that's what our battalion patch looks like there. Okay. So sometimes the infantry guys and a lot of the commanders, they come out of that infantry, starting 2014, 2022, and they feel a little bit threatened by drones. Obviously, in reality, actually threatened by drones. Okay. But also threatened by drones in this sense of, oh my gosh, they're going to try and replace us with drones. And I have said, I have to repeat over and over, you know, drones will not replace infantry. There's always going to have to be somebody out there, some poor guy out there, uh, doing stuff. And so that's a big thing. The other thing, I mean, foreigners trying to imagine what it's like to live under constant threat of drone attack, as I do every day. Um, the level of intensity of that on the zero line versus 10, 20 kilometers back, or in Kiev, for example, is just really incomprehensible for people. A lot of people think about drones. Oh, Kiev is getting attacked by drones. They're thinking of like little toy drones, like maybe you have your DJIs or something. And that's why I emphasized about the Shaheds, that um and and then also this concept, like you were saying, about, oh, doesn't Ukraine have enough drones now? Like, I mean, look, the GWAT wants its drone warfare back. Okay, like people, like these first of all, they're kamikaze drones. A drone that was in development last year is completely needs to be redeveloped this year. Okay, because the technology has completely changed. All right, um, and this the main thing is people don't understand. Even like scientific researchers in the West who I work with on a day to day basis have no idea how far behind they are, how far behind the West is in terms of this development. Like,
I think the best illustration was it was a Pentagon that was sharing that video on Twitter where they shared as like no one has seen this before a drone dropping a grenade. It
right,
was hilarious. Like some half a year ago, it was a video appeared from
right,
Pentagon.
right.
It was
Yeah,
after
I mean, but
Hegseth
if you're
announced
just
it.
a casual, if you're just a casual, you know, uh, bystander, barely a viewer of the Ukraine war, what's going on here, you have no idea. It's just, oh yeah, there's a war in Ukraine. I hear there's some drones there. I mean, I get that
Pretty
all the
much.
time. So,
That's why we need more streams like these.
right,
All right, let's
right.
get to the some of the questions. There are some really good ones. Catalan is saying, James, you mentioned GPS spoofing that can make a drone think it is in Panama. Is
Yeah.
there is there spoofing that can make a drone trajectory deviate by a little bit? Would that
Yes.
make spoofing harder to detect?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. That's a more sophisticated. Can be more sophisticated. There are different use cases for each. Simple answer is absolutely yes. Depending on where you
Okay.
go, it can be difficult just to drive across this country if you don't know where the roads are and what road you're on. I've gotten lost many times because there's GPS spoofing everywhere.
Yeah, it happened to us in Kiev. We were coming back right before the curfew, and because like both me and the guys that came with, they didn't know the layout of Kiev at the time, or at least the area where we were in. And then it was the air alert, and we got the spoofed. So, and then suddenly our navigation showed that we were somewhere around the equator, and we were like, okay, so how do we get back to our hotel?
Yeah.
And
Good luck.
there was a whole direction because like no one has anything, no one has
Yeah.
ideas. Like, can we
Just
try to navigate?
park and take the subway.
Yeah, exactly. Ivan says, what I haven't figured out yet is why you can't use electronic warfare emitters as the source for your target. Turn the defense into
Yeah.
weakness.
Yeah. Good question. That's a very good question. Um, so first of all, you're flying towards that source and your screen goes blank. All right. And you can't see where the source is. And so you miss. Okay. The source might be moving. And so, a few meters off, and that's enough for the source of that emission to at least survive the attack. Okay. But sometimes, yeah, if the source is not moving, theoretically, if you're a good pilot, you could just home in on that. But also, there's another really important part. You're talking about close range sources, but the Russians have long range sources, and they have many, many of them. And when you have a whole bunch of antennas all transmitting on the same frequencies, blasting, just absolutely blasting on the same frequencies. Think about sound, right? If everybody's screaming at the same note, okay, singing, screaming at the same note in a stadium, okay, where is that sound coming from? How are you going to target that? Okay, same concept. It's the more antennas there are, the more powerful they are all along this same. You just know they're on the horizon. That's all you can tell. And it's very difficult to locate those.
Yeah. Mark is asking, is there consideration of bouncing the signal off the atmosphere, i.e., the signal is up instead of linear?
Yes, but only for certain frequencies. Okay, that's specific frequencies, and you have distortion and you have delay under those circumstances. Delay is a huge problem, a huge factor when you're flying an FPV, for example. I'm not saying these are bad ideas at all. When you're flying an FPV, if you have any sort of delay, it means that your target can move. You can have changing, atmospheric weather, wind, all kinds of other conditions, and all of a sudden your drone's tumbling and flipping upside down and doing all kinds of other crazy stuff. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Wayne is asking, can drone be used to triangulate on drone? It says operations, but I guess it meant operators.
Yeah, yeah, that is something that is done, um, and we want to do it more. Um, home in on those signal sources. Absolutely, absolutely.
What can be done and is being done? This was a question from before about the SIM cards in Ukraine. Do you think is any countermeasures that are being done?
I don't know. That is that I don't work for a cellular phone company anymore, but I hope somebody's working on it. Because it's a problem. I work when I worked for a cell phone company, I know exactly how difficult it is to keep track of IMEI numbers when anybody in any store can just go in and buy one. Okay, somebody here was talking in the chat about like registering IMEI numbers and having to provide a ID and all kinds of hoops and stuff. And I maybe that will be the solution. It's not foolproof, um, but that is one possible solution. I hope that it gets solved soon.
Can lower orbit satellites help avoid jamming? Sergey is asking.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean that's what Starlink is. Okay, so imagine that your REB is going horizontal. Your electronic warfare, all the antennas are pointing horizontally. So if you can get above that, even with a drone, a lot of times the drone operators, what you do, you hit some electronic warfare, fly up, get up out of that stuff. Okay, of course, then you can't target your, unless even with a bomb, the targeting is going to be off, but it is one method. And then you also become vulnerable to interceptors, and you become vulnerable to just people taking pot shots from the ground at you, okay, which happens. Depending on the size of your drone, it can be a real problem. But yes, Starlink and other low Earth orbit satellites can are actively used because the signal is pointing down. It has less atmosphere to go through, um, and it has less electronic warfare to go through. So yes, that is happening for sure. But you have to have a big enough drone to carry that antenna. Oh, you're muted, Jordy.
Guys, last three questions. Catalin is asking: are the consideration on mounting antennas on ground drones keep them highly mobile?
Yeah, that's a big problem. All the problems that I've been discussing now on ground drones, this is the same deal, right? So you have to have line of sight. How do you maintain that line of sight? It means you have to have a big tall antenna. Now everybody can see your big tall antenna, 20 meters up, 40 meters up. Sounds great. But now you're like, hey, hello, here I am. So then, okay, so what do you do then? Then you have a loitering drone above pointing down. Okay, but now that's a target, right? And don't talk about fiber optics with ground drones. It's
For people that like from my side, I've heard of potential developments making ground drones combined with a tethered sort of like a repeater drone
yeah,
attached to it. So essentially,
yeah,
there is like a wire that goes to the ground drone, and then the drone goes up when you need essentially this mobile antenna, so to say,
yep,
and then drone goes back down and so on.
yeah.
So there are certain solutions that are being worked on
It's
from
the
my
same
knowledge.
cat and mouse game, just
Um, What are Steve is asking? Are Australian cardboard drones still being used, or are they out of place now? Well, James already addressed it. Said that what was developed a year ago is not really relevant
no, but
anymore.
but
But
just because the cardboard drones, I can't remember the name of them right now. The Dart. Well, okay, the Ukrainian version of that, I believe, is called the Dart. Yeah, can I have some? If you have some, please give them to me. I will use them. Yeah, maybe there's some things in there that need to be updated, but the basic framework, the shape and the basic structure obviously still works. Yeah, okay, maybe the frequencies have to be changed and some of the technology, but the basics are there. I mean, F-16s are still flying, you know. So absolutely, please send me some of those. I would like them.
yes, then there is a comment saying that you have hella goatee. So
Yeah, yeah, it's going crazy today. I try to keep it a little bit straight, but it wants to do this whole curly Q. It happens, you know.
yeah. And then the last one will be from Valarauko. Sorry for butchering the name. What about throttling down the bandwidth for solving the SIM issue?
Yeah, no, Ukrainians would hate that. They would riot. That would be like worse than anything Zelensky could do to like I think that it would be worse than if Zelensky just surrendered to the Russians. I think Ukrainians would be like, "We want our internet." Yeah. Yeah.
Super. Thank you so much, everyone, for your amazing questions, and thank you so much for being here. Super. Thanks, James, for finally. Well, like I mean, like you were asking for this for a while. It's me mostly saying that that I just always am busy with
Well,
something.
it's one thing to ask, it's another thing to have time at the same time that you
Yeah,
have time, frankly. So thank
yeah,
the gods, the stars aligned,
yeah.
basically.
So, guys, tell us if you like this type of format where we dive deep into. I have like list of questions that we can still go into. Drones have been fascinating. I've been very
Mm,
interested in the tech, and there's a lot of things to discuss and understand. So, if you're
mm.
interested, write it down. Support jamesyukraine.com, if I believe,
Yep,
and
yep.
just let's get some of the drones to frontline. As James said, there is not enough of them. Some
Thank you.
last words from you, James.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, listen, guys, it's serious out here. It's not just because there's Christmas. Oh, everybody's taking a break. No, no, no. Okay, if you can go to that website whyukraine.com, help my battalion purchase those drones. If there's a problem with the monobank because it's a Ukrainian bank, sometimes like particularly American banks and Ukrainian banks don't like each other. Okay, if you get it some kind of an error there, then go back onto my website and help me get supplies for my laboratory, fiber optics, individual drones, the tools I need for my new engineers. Anything and everything helps at whatever level. If you can't do that, share this video, share this website, uh, and that helps as well. And I just really appreciate everybody who's watching. You're all helping. Uh, Дуже дуже дякую.
Super. Thank you so much, everyone. Support Ukraine, trust in Ukrainian armed forces. Love you. Slava Ukraini. And we will see you next time.
До побачення.
And oh no. Well, this is a pity. Yes, there we go.